obviously you're charged. You're charged. Was anybody saying anything to you? Did you hear him over the intercom so he couldn't breathe? Did any other nurses advise you of this?
No. I was at the computer or whatever. He rang the bell, and he said that he couldn't breathe.
Okay.
And so I informed the charge nurse.
I told the nurses, he's saying he can't breathe, and they said he was detoxing, he's fine.
Did any of those say what to you? Yes, to you that he needed to be checked because he could not breathe? You don't recall?
No, I don't recall it. No, not at all. No.
This is Annaleen Visser, the charge nurse at the Cobb County Detention Center whose sloppy supervision led to one of the most shocking jail deaths in history. In September of 2019, police arrested Kevil Wingo for suspected drug possession. He was booked the same day at the Cobb County Detention Center as he awaited trial. But at 11:45 p.m. on September 28th, which was his 5th day at the center, he informed the staff that he was experiencing excruciating stomach pain. He was wheeled in on a wheelchair to the main area so the nurses could keep an eye on him. Now, given that his arrest was for suspected drug possession, it is plausible that he might have been in pain from detoxing. Deputy Sheriff Quentin Appleby, who was pushing the wheelchair, recalled his pain in a later interview.
He just said, I'm not going to make it. I'm finna fall out the wheelchair. And I was kind of like, telling him, like, no, you're going to be all right, we're almost there.
As Wingo was taken through the center, his cry for help was heard by all. Nearly all the staff members grew concerned about Wingo's yelling, and they all had the same idea. This man needs medical attention. Even after the change in shifts and Wingo successfully being put in room 8, he couldn't stop yelling in pain, alerting everyone on duty. The secretary, Tiana Davis, recalled Wingo's suffering as part of the later investigation, as he kept pleading to anyone who'd listen that he couldn't breathe.
So when I was at the computer or whatever, he rang the bell, and he said that he couldn't breathe.
Okay.
And so I informed the charge nurse. I'm the secretary, the unit secretary.
Right.
I informed the charge nurse that he was stating that he was under distress.
And the charge nurse?
Annaleen Visser.
After a while, the staff started to ignore Wingo's suffering. At some points, the footage shows Wingo standing up to the door trying to get someone to help him, but unfortunately, the entire staff was following the advice of the charge nurse, who didn't even bother showing up to check on Wingo in the first 6 hours. The only reason she knew about Wingo was through Davis, and as she told her about his condition,
he rang the bell, and he said that he couldn't breathe.
Okay.
And so I informed the charge nurse. I'm the secretary, the unit secretary.
Right.
I informed the charge nurse that he was stating that he was under distress.
And the charge nurse?
Annaleen Visser.
Okay.
And she just said, he's okay. He's okay. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm going to watch him and see what he does or whatever.
Right.
In such distress, it is the responsibility of the head nurse to take the person's vitals to make sure whether the person is under any actual sickness. But, as you can see, Visser just walks up to him, observes him, and by observe we mean she just looked at him, and walked away as if everything's all right. Around 7:26 a.m., he gets the attention of Deputy Sheriff Lynn Marshall, who also recalled reporting his sickness to the head nurse and how Wingo kept pleading that he can't breathe.
And you said you reported to the nurse. What nurse did you tell that, like, hey, he's saying he needs to go to the hospital?
Well, they all heard me. Well, I said that he's saying he can't breathe. And I know Annaleen said he just wants to go to the hospital. He'll be okay. She was the one that said to put him on close ops.
And Annaleen, just for clarity, that's Nurse Visser?
Visser, yes.
Charge nurse, right?
Right.
Okay.
This was the second time the charge nurse was informed of his situation, but she was convinced that he just wanted to go to the hospital to get back on drugs. As soon as Marshall opened the door, Wingo collapsed in front of her and kept pleading for help. But, as you can see, his yell for help kept getting ignored. You can even catch glimpses of smiles on the deputy's face as they thought that this was some ruse for an escape, as the charge nurse had convinced them all that he was faking it. Instead of getting a wheelchair like the first time, the deputies grab him by the shirt and forcibly drag him to the counter where he gets booked. One of the inmates experiencing all this revealed how, despite his constant cries, not a single staff member turned to help.
What happened with the guy was in pain, and nobody took him serious. He was laying on the ground crying for help, and nobody took him serious.
After bearing all this, the deputies make a horrendous decision to put Wingo in an isolation cell so that he's silenced for good. Seeing as he can't stand properly, this is how the deputies quote-unquote dispose Wingo in the cell. He is stripped from his clothes and given an anti-suicide smock to wear. Now, the irony here is that this outfit prevents the person from self-harm, but for it to work, the person has to wear it, quote-unquote. The sheriffs here just lay it over his naked body and exit the room. He moves his arm around in a struggling way, but that doesn't bother the deputies at all as they shut the door behind him and leave. You can tell that his yell for help didn't stop here, but in a soundproof room, it's almost impossible to hear. This is why, for isolation cells, sheriffs are instructed to check on the prisoner every 15 minutes.
Did you look in the cell door?
Yes.
Did you look in the window?
Yes.
Now, even though he said yes to checking on him, this is how he actually did it. He only scanned the code and never actually looked inside. Nearly an hour later, after the deputies actually made the effort of checking the cell, they found Wingo dead on the floor. Time of death, 9:51 in the morning. The autopsy report of Kevil Wingo revealed his cause of death, which was complications of perforated gastric ulcer with peritonitis, which technically means a perforated ulcer that demanded urgent medical attention, something that he was denied the entire 9 hours he spent begging for it inside the Cobb County Detention Center. And while there's a lot of blame to pass around, in reality, all the deputies and staff members were following protocol, despite acknowledging Wingo's pain. The only person who had any authority of checking up on Wingo's health, or the authority of advising anyone to check on him, was the charge nurse, Annaleen Visser. She had barely a few minutes of presence in the jail footage, so we're as curious as you are to see her excuse for not providing urgent medical attention to the man who demanded it until his last breath.
We've watched the video, went back through everything.
Okay.
Now we're going to start back when you came into shift that morning, okay? All right. And we've talked to other people, so we've, watched the video, so we've got a better understanding now of what happened, what went on. As before we did the other day, we went into it. We didn't have video that day. We were just doing our preliminary interviews, and this is just something we follow up and do more interviews after this, just for our investigation. Okay.
Sure.
So that's what this is about. So that morning you came into shift. Could you explain again, what was passed on to you, his behavior?
Sure.
And just, kind of slow it down for me so we can understand it, so we can,
Okay, so it was a Sunday morning. I came on duty at 6 o'clock, and the night nurse, Yvette Burton, she handed over to me, and she said that Mr. Wingo was, in the night, he was disorderly, and they were going to put him in close-ups. She told me she was going to put him in close-ups. I said, okay, don't worry, I'll look at him, and if he needs to go, I'll put him in close-ups. She went home, gave me a report, went home. I went and sat at the desk. At that time, there was no commotion. He was in room number 8, which is just a little distance. There was no commotion.
And at that time, where were you sitting in reference to room 8?
I was sitting near the officer's desk.
Okay.
So I sit there, which is about 3 doors away from me. He was in 8, 7, 6, and 5, just directly in front of me. Okay, there was no commotion. Then what happened is, while I got up, is the gentleman next to his bed was at the back, and there were 1, 2, 3 bunks, and here's the door. The door was here. And the gentleman on the right-hand side, Mr. I can't remember his name, Watkins, I can't remember his name. He got up to go to the bathroom, and Mr. Wingo got into his bed. So when he came back, he said, hey, this guy's in my bed, okay? And Marshall was on duty. She was the deputy at the time. And I didn't go yet. That was the first time that I went there. So we saw the commotion, and he was loud at the time. And Mr. Watkins, I think it was Mr. Watkins, if I remember, said, I can't remember his name. I think he said, get him out of my bunk. Okay. He got up and he went back to his bunk, Mr. Wingo. Then later on, he came and he moved in between the 2 bunks. And he was lying there, and that's when the gentleman, Mr. Watkins, I think his name was Watkins, called and said, get this guy away from me because he stinks. And that's when I got up and I went to the window to see. And I said to Mr. Wingo, go back to your bunk. This is not your bunk. And he scooted back and he went back to his bunk. Okay? Then I went back. And then later on, this guy went to the bathroom again. And that's when Mr. Wingo went into his bed again. And that's when Marshall said, I'll have to move him to close.
It is interesting how she's portraying Wingo as the person causing the nuisance when all he wanted was medical attention. There are instances in the jail footage that show that his roommate gets disturbed by his vomiting and hollering, but she's forgetting the obvious fact of why. If he had been given medical attention, he wouldn't have been such a nuisance. Also, she is right about the fact that Deputy Sheriff Lynn Marshall chose to put Wingo in the pad, but she had a different reason for doing so.
Somewhere else. And I told him that Annaleen had said that they could close off, but my rooms are full, so I didn't know where else to put them third time.
Okay. And I know from listening to phone calls, when you talked to Major Harris, you expressed to him that you had one open cell, but it was away. It was 14, I think, and you said, hey, I don't want to put him down there because I can't keep my eye on him.
So he's detoxing.
Right.
You know, they need to be where you can see them because detox can have issues.
And so that's why you suggested the pad was so it could be monitored and watched just in case.
If only she knew that the isolation room, you know, the room where inmates are guaranteed 15-minute monitoring, was monitored like this. She wouldn't have put him in the pad and put the entire Cobb County Center's credibility on the line. Right now, let's get back to Annaleen Visser and what she did when she was informed about Wingo's worsening condition.
When you're pulling out first appearance and such, and you said you reported to the nurse, what nurse did you tell that, like, hey, he's saying he needs to go to the hospital?
Well, they all heard me. Well, I said that he's saying he can't breathe. And I know Annaleen said he just wants to go to the hospital. He'll be okay. She was the one that said to put him on close-ups.
And Annaleen, just for clarity, that's Nurse Visser?
Visser, yes.
Charge nurse, right?
Right.
Okay, so she's kind of the one who runs things when the doctor's not there. She's the charge nurse.
Right.
Okay. Sorry, keep going.
But yeah, there was, I don't even remember who else was there. But like I said, I do remember she was sitting there. It was her day at work.
I'm sorry, what?
Right.
Okay. Sorry, keep going.
But yeah, there was, I don't even remember who else was there. But like I said, I do remember.
And so I informed the charge nurse. I'm the secretary, the unit secretary.
Right.
I informed the charge nurse that he was stating that he was under distress.
And the charge nurse,
Annaleen Visser.
Okay.
And she just said, he's okay. He's okay. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm going to watch him and see what he does or whatever.
Right.
And I watched him. He sat down.
And you said you reported to the nurse. What nurse did you tell that, like, hey, he's saying he needs to go to the hospital?
Well, they all heard me. Well, I said that he's saying he can't breathe. And I know Annaleen said he just wants to go to the hospital. He'll be okay. She was the one that said to put him on close-ups.
And Annaleen, just for clarity, that's Nurse Visser?
Visser, yes.
Charge nurse, right?
How could she have denied knowing that Wingo was having trouble breathing? This point is exactly why the ending of this case is one of the biggest atrocities in the history of Cobb County, which, again, we'll reveal at the end. But for now, this fact alone should have been a testament to her incompetence as a charge nurse.
Explain that. Okay. He was loud. He was, I don't know what he was saying. He was just disruptive, loud and shouting, and I couldn't remember exactly what he was saying. And that's why Marshall said, I think I'm going to put him in close-ups.
So Marshall said that she was going to put him in close-ups.
Yes. She said, I'll move him so that he can go to close-ups. That's when she called Gordon, because he was rowdy and because that guy wanted to hit him because he was on his bunk. And he said, if you don't take him away, we're going to hit him. Okay. And Marshall moved him out.
When was the last time his vitals were taken?
Listen, probably the night before, I think. I don't know when Yvette does it. I think they do it about, I don't know what time they do it at night. And we only do it at about 8 o'clock. Okay. But if he's disruptive, you can't, I don't go near them as far as vitals are concerned. Only for my.
I've seen the video. I didn't see the disruptive part, so.
She claims that vitals are taken at night around 8 p.m. But what about the inmates who are booked after that? Is it like a fixed hourly thing? Also, she claims that she didn't want to go near him because he was being quote-unquote disruptive. His disruptiveness wasn't physical aggression, it was a plea for medical help, which she mistook as being disruptive. But because you and I watched the video, and so did this detective here.
I saw the video and I didn't see the disruptive part, so just to be honest. In the video, there are people that we can see that are employees that they're concerned about him in the room, and they stated that he fell over in the room.
No, he didn't fall. Well, I didn't see that, and he never told me he fell. Neither did the other inmates say that he fell at all. He was lying between the two bunks. I don't know, maybe he thought that was the bed, or he just wanted to lie there. And the only reason I went there was that gentleman that Mr. on the right-hand side said, move him because he stinks, we don't want him here. And I asked him to go back.
Did any of the nurses say that he
What?
fell?
No,
To you?
not to me. No, not to me at all.
Would it be surprising if some of them did say that they told you that
I would be surprised. Yeah, because I went there. I went to his room. I don't know if you saw that in the video.
Yeah, I saw
Okay.
the video.
I did go to the room.
Yeah, you did.
I did go to the room and ask him to move back.
Now, when you asked him to move back, what was his? How did he move back?
He moved back with his hands onto the bunk.
Did that look a little bit
No,
like not normal as the way he was
no,
crawling?
he had on white pants. When I asked him to move, he moved back. He scooted back with his hands.
When you were talking to him, what was his complaint at the dorm?
He didn't say anything.
He didn't say
But
anything.
at the window, all I said to him is, Mr. Wingo, move back. And I still went like this and said, move back to your bunk. That was all. He didn't say anything to me like I've got a headache or I feel sick or I'm vomiting or anything.
Okay. Well, why were you asking him to move back?
Because the
Because-
gentleman said, if you don't move him, he's lying. You know, I went through because the gentleman said he's lying here on the floor and he stinks. That's why I went there and said, please move back. And he did.
I guess what I was getting at with that is the deputy. Why wasn't she over there? Why did you notify her that there was going to be a fight? Or because
You know what?
normally if something like that's going to happen, okay, we may have to step in to break that fight up instead of you just go up to the door and asking them to move back. So that's why I was asking.
I don't know, I didn't even ask Marshall. I mean, I think she came the second time that he lay on the bunk. She came and she said, I think I better just move him to close box. Let's move him out of the room.
Okay. And you said that if somebody's acting out, you don't take their vitals.
I know.
We've seen the video, and I've yet to see him throughout the video acting out at all.
Well, I think,
And, there's people, did anybody mention about taking his vitals to you? Do you remember that? When somebody said that to you?
no, nobody said take his vitals, no.
Okay. No.
I went over there because he was loud, okay, and because the guy said he was lying in between the two bunks. Yes, and he continued being loud.
So, as a charge nurse, she didn't go over to his cell to check his vitals or provide any medical help. She went there because he was loud and his roommate wanted to pick a fight with Wingo. If she was the janitor going to clean the vomit up, or the deputy sheriff going to stop them from fighting each other, that would have made complete sense. But this is just crazy. Also, she told him to back off, which he did in a calm and non-threatening manner. Another sign that he wasn't disruptive at all.
So you don't think you were just coming to an assumption since you heard him and warned about that he was acting out?
Well, maybe,
'Cause,
maybe I was warned, okay,
Yeah.
maybe, be careful,
Yeah.
Maybe, but I mean, Marshall moved him out because he was disruptive, which is not everybody's fun.
Okay.
And we didn't want to fight.
No, you don't want to fight.
Sure.
I'm just having a hard time recalling that no one stated his medical emergency to you. That, and think about this: while you're sitting at the computer, you're telling me that no one made a comment to you about him not being able to breathe?
No, I promise you. Nobody. Nobody.
Okay.
I'm not lying, I promise you.
Okay. And nobody, you're telling me nobody made a comment to check his vitals?
No.
Do you know what his oxygen level was when he came in?
No.
You don't recall? Okay.
I don't recall that. I know they did.
While she assumed that his vitals were taken the night prior, she was also asked by her lab technician, Tiffany Womack, if she could take his vitals.
And last asking, like I said, at one point he fell over into the floor, and that's when I told her, I said, he's laying on the ground. And then he made his way back. He wasn't standing, but he made his way back to the window and again asking, he said, please help me, I cannot breathe. And that's when I said, look, I'll do his vitals, can we just pull him out? And that's when she got up, stayed behind the secretary's desk and just looked. And she said, he's fine, he just wants drugs. It was 97% last night, whatever, I guess, from night shift.
All right.
And set back down. So, I'm aggravated.
But you
It's
did.
bothered me.
Let me ask you this, because I've never been in the medical field. You have a charge nurse, then you have other nurses that are, she's the supervisor of the nurses.
She is. We answer to her. She gives us
Okay.
orders.
So if she gives you a direct instruction, and you disregard it,
I can be.
you can be terminated or
Yes, she would have to go
disciplinary
to.
action.
Oh yeah, definitely. She would have to in turn go to our nurse manager. But she could send me home for the day. She could,
Right.
In turn, it could turn into something more major.
So you felt like you were obligated to follow her direction.
And then, like I said, I don't want to question. She is an RN. Like I said, I'm not. I'm just EMT. I just draw blood. Maybe
Yeah.
she's been here. I know she's been here a super long time. I know she's seen things. Maybe she felt like it was okay. But then once I had found out, later on that what all had happened, it just made me cry. I'm sorry.
No, you're
That
fine.
has bothered me.
Yeah, I understand.
That has bothered me so bad because
Yeah.
very, very bad.
So she forbade Womack to take his vitals, and Womack knew that the instructions of the charge nurse were to be followed. But obviously, it would have taken heroic actions to go against the charge nurse and help the man who was begging for help. But unfortunately, they didn't.
So, why was he down?
Because he was detoxing from opiates. He does IV heroin and he snorts
Was there
heroin and cocaine.
anything else that was down there, or complaints that he was down there for?
Mm-mm. Not that I know of.
His
No.
ulcer?
I just know it was opiate thing. It was opiate detox.
How about an ulcer? Because that's what he went down for, was an ulcer.
Oh no, nobody told me anything about an ulcer. No.
Is that
When she handed over to me, she obviously invited him. When she handed over to me, she said he's for opiate detox and it's IV heroin, snorts it, and snorts cocaine.
You guys normally look through the notes and the charts when
You know
between
what?
shifts.
I normally do because I'm going to hand over to the doctor. Okay, it was Sunday morning, so I hadn't gone through his stuff at all. I think he was room number 8 and we had other people before him. But I do go through it normally to hand over to the doctor, if there's anything else. But if it's good, she really is good, and she normally would stand everything if there was an ulcer. And if Reddy didn't mention it,
Wait, you're saying you didn't look at the chart that morning?
I did not
that
have the
morning?
chart. No, I did not have the chart. I just got the report from her. And this happened, I came on duty, 6 o'clock, she handed over to me about 20 past 6, I think she left. And at 7 o'clock, he was already being loud and getting into somebody else's.
And you say he's being loud. What else was he doing? Besides being loud, what was he?
What can I say? Just, as I say, getting into other people's bunk, I suppose, what do you call it? Not being obedient, not following command. Don't know why he wanted to get into the front bunk on the right-hand side. I don't know why.
Was any of the times when he was talking, was there anything saying about being in pain?
No.
Because my view of the video is he's in physical pain and he passed out.
Passed out?
About 6 times. That's what he was doing when he was getting on the boats. He was passing out. He did one time he was standing straight up and he went flat straight back. Boom. And a nurse saw it.
Which nurse?
The one sitting at the front counter. And she looked up And she
The
said,
tech saw it at the front counter. Tiana.
So once he banged on the door, he fell back because I'm assuming he couldn't breathe.
So you saw him fall back?
I saw him fall back.
Describe fall back.
Like he went back like that.
Did he
And
fall?
onto a bed, onto someone else's bed.
Okay.
So then he gets back up and he falls back on another person's bed.
Okay.
So they drag him back to his bed. And then he gets up again, I'm assuming now because he's really worried, scared. And he falls back into the shower. He's like, oh, like that into the shower. So then after that, Annaleen called for Sergeant Gordon to come and pick him up to take him someplace else.
And he fell right back. Nobody told me that. I promise you, nobody told me
he
that.
passed out. He hit him 6 times. When he went and sat
How
out.
could he pass out? Didn't he just come through quickly? You know what I mean?
He fell out, and it wasn't a fake fall. And no, it was what
Okay, nobody told me that. Nobody told me that he fell. Nobody told me
He went to the bathroom multiple times.
that. Who?
The inmate.
Okay, apparently he was complaining of a penile discharge.
He had that in the ulcer.
I know, don't tell us. I don't know. Okay, I only read that afterwards.
Blood in his vomit.
No.
That's what he came down for. Force out.
But you know what? He came down for that and then he changed his tune, remember? He came down and said, I haven't got that anymore. He said, now I've got, I think it ended up with penile discharge.
That quote-unquote penile discharge is a common side effect among ulcer patients, and the type of discharge can predict how serious the condition is, something she, as the charge nurse, would know about.
You about it.
Okay.
Obviously, you're in charge, and so you're in charge. So we got to see
Sure.
if people did talk to you about it.
No. Nobody told me that he fell, number one, or that he's vomiting, or that he's passed out, or that he's complaining. No.
I'm not for sure if he was vomiting while he was down there, but that was the reason he was coming to their end for an ulcer and for
Okay, he came down originally, apparently, because he wanted to go to the ER. And when they come off opiates, they want more opiates. So they say, I need to go to the ER to get more drugs. Could be, I'm just saying, could
I
be,
agree.
that he maybe wants more drugs.
I've been there with Chapman.
So we can't, if there's a reason to send him, we would have sent him. If he's vomiting blood, or he's pouring blood,
We send him for a bleeding ulcer.
If he's bleeding, sure.
If there was an ulcer.
If there was blood and he's vomiting red blood,
Yes.
sure, we would send him.
So how about if that was happening before South and he got sent down for that?
Well, then the officer would tell us. And what we say is, if he is
the
vomiting.
nurse is the one that sent him down for it because she was there. The pill nurse, I believe.
Yeah, the pill nurse, she sent him down.
What, for vomiting?
And his complaint was of ulcers.
Of ulcers. Okay, so that's new to me. But usually, what happens if they say on the pod they're vomiting? We usually say, give them a red bag so we can see the vomit. Okay, that's all I want to do. I don't mind, you can come down. Let me see the vomit. And when I see the vomit, I call the doctor and say, listen, he's got vomit, blah, 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 blah. And the doctor will say, send him out or start an IV. We're good at that.
But this situation is before you.
Before I came on duty, sure.
So that's something that we're trying to look into too and see what the circumstances are with you, the charge nurse. So, did they, and I'm not assuming, was there blood in the vomit? Is that what was said for coming down, or was he saying that?
Just complaining of ulcers when he came down. The blood and vomit was several days before that he was complaining about. And
while in custody?
Yeah, while in custody. Yeah, because he was given a shot by the doctor.
Oh, that's a few days. Okay, that's a few days.
And that's when he was in Break South.
Okay, he was given phenytoin. I remember he was. Oh yeah, I think somebody told me they gave him phenytoin.
So he'd been thrown up for a few days.
I don't know about a few days. Yeah. We had phenytoin if you got it once, we'll give you phenytoin.
Right.
We don't.
A shot of it.
Sure.
I don't know.
A shot, sure.
I know my wife too when she was pregnant.
Sure. Yeah.
Did you have, besides walking up to him and telling him to back up, did you have any contact with him?
No.
No contact.
But I did hear a noise in room 8. I did hear a noise in room 8. And I think Marshall, maybe she did 1 or 2 rounds. I don't know. I can't remember. We don't take vitals
So
from
that's
them.
not a, well,
That's not a standard.
how about if it's a compliant patient, before they leave and they move somewhere else, is their vitals taken?
If they're moving him, I mean, he's a medical patient. Why would they be moving him to the annex and it will be extension? I don't understand. I wouldn't move him because he's a medical patient.
I know, but I'm saying it on a normal stance, a person that's moving out of the infirmary, is that part of the process for the determining the vitals before they left?
No. If they're close-ups and they're cleared by mental health, they go straight to the pod. We don't do their vitals. If they're cleared, because they want to kill themselves. So when they're cleared, they go straight.
So how about a medical patient?
A medical patient, well, we do all the vitals. We do it once in the morning and once at night.
How about if they're moving? If they get cleared?
Well, if they get cleared, so the doctor comes, goes around, clears them, the vitals have already been done in the morning. Unless they've got high blood pressure or there's some reason why we have to recheck it, then we do it, no problem. Or blood sugar, we recheck it.
I'm learning from this too, that's why there's so many questions.
Sure.
I'm trying to figure it out. So in my mind, are you saying, I'm not doubting that he was saying words and stuff, but in my mind, are you thinking and being a little bit more precautionary of saying that he was rowdy because of the nurse statement prior saying he was disorderly?
No, I think I heard him.
Right.
I heard him being disruptive.
I mean, being disruptive, but as in as being loud talking.
No, as in cursing.
Well, that's what I mean by loud talking.
Cursing.
Was he fighting? Like
No.
Was he?
He wasn't fighting at all.
When he sat down.
No, he wasn't fighting at all.
So, what I'm trying to get at is when the vitals been taken, either way, if he was compliant.
These vitals would have been done when it was his turn.
Yes, I understand that part. If he stayed in there,
Yeah.
but I'm saying that because what I'm looking at is with his vitals been taken, if he was leaving out of there
to go to the annex.
Yes.
No, they would only move him to the annex or to close up if he's disruptive.
Right. But that's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out if it's a normal thing that happens when anybody leaves, are vitals taken, or if it's you guys take your vitals are taken at morning time and evening time.
Yeah. Unless the doctor says he's got high blood pressure, recheck it, do it again.
Then you would say it.
Yeah. But if he's moving because he's disruptive and he's loud and he wants to go to the ER, no. In fact, we're scared to go near them because you never know, they'll attack you or hit you, you know what I mean?
I understand.
I don't go near them.
But that's why I keep, because I'm trying to make sure I understand that if they leave out of there at any circumstance, you're saying their vitals wouldn't be taken necessarily. It's only you taking that 7:30 in the morning and probably 7:30 at night.
Sure. 700 or 800 times. As soon as it settles down and it can be, remember, they would be done when it's compliant with Marshall, do you understand, with the deputy. Right. She's got other stuff going on, and if mental health is out, she can only bring out so many officers. Right. So we wait until she says, I say to her, can we do the vitals, can we start? And she'll tell me when everything's calm, okay, I can bring 2 or 3 people out. Because she just brings 2 at a time, you know what I mean?
Her point throughout all this is that they do vitals in morning and night, both times in which Wingo was in the infirmary, but because he was quote-unquote disruptive, something that the detective said was not true, they chose not to take his vitals. It was her presumption, based on his hollering and crying, that he was non-compliant, even though we just saw the video in which he showed no physical or verbal aggression. This is what compels us to believe that she was criminally negligent of Wingo's well-being and acted on assumptions that were clearly false. Now, it's clear that the idea of an isolation cell was coined by the deputy sheriff, but considering his medical health issues, the charge nurse should have been consulted beforehand. This brings the detective to his gravely concerning question.
Are they supposed to be checked when they go into the bed?
You know what? If they, okay, but normally, no. Because they're weepy, they're agitated, some of them are aggressive, some, I don't touch them. I really don't, unless they're calm and they say, listen, okay, otherwise, no.
No, but...
And most of them refuse. They say, I don't want to talk, I don't want to answer your questions, just leave me alone. And I put there, will not answer questions, won't answer, because I've got to admit them. So everybody who goes into the pad, I've got to admit them.
So,
Do you understand?
so that, would you say the only time that you would check on an inmate that went into a pad or something is if they're put in a chair, or if they're
Or if they released. They're released. Okay. Otherwise, the office, unless they fight, if they get into a fight, or they start bleeding, or they vomit, or they jump from the top, or whatever, then we go.
So,
Otherwise,
so when he went into the pad from leaving from your guys' and
To that
he went
extent.
into the pad and nothing was going on different, it's unnormal that it would be abnormal if you did get checked for vitals or checked on him because he's not in a chair.
no, he won't be checked. If he's taken from room 8 to that extension, he won't be checked. No, that is not the normal, because they're moving him because he's disrupted. Okay?
So the reason his battles weren't taken is because he was disrupted.
Sure. He wanted to go to the ER.
And
Well, that goes against what I was asking, because it wasn't because he was disrupted.
They moved him because he was disrupted.
No, they
And the guy?
listen. I'm not trying to trick you.
Okay.
His vitals weren't taken
Mm-hmm.
because he was disrupted.
Yes. Yes.
They were.
They would not take him because he was disrupted.
Well, that's kind of contradicting what we already
Okay.
in the process. Because you were putting me under the understanding that vitals are taken at 7:30 in the morning.
Yes.
7:30 at night.
Yes. Yes.
So vitals weren't taken because he was disruptive. It's
Well,
because he
vitals
was-
weren't taken on him that day because we hadn't started doing it, number one.
That's where.
Okay, we hadn't started doing
That's
it.
where you see where I don't know if you take
Okay.
because vitals weren't taken because he was disruptive. Vitals are taken because 7:30 is when it happens. He was taken out because the vitals are taken when the nurse does his meds and they come out and
Yes.
check.
Yes. Yes. And everybody gets their vitals.
You guys do not check people's vitals when they are leaving the infirmary to go
To the extension. No.
And then his vitals were not checked at the extension because that is not a normal thing for when they're putting them in there for that case.
Yes. No.
Okay, see, you were going for
The other
you
way.
were on the disruptive part, and
Okay.
you already told me that, so I want to clarify it to be sure that that is what we just said is the correct way.
Sure.
So now she's hitting us with a story change by telling us that vitals were meant to be taken at 7:30 in the morning, but they couldn't because he was taken out from the infirmary and towards the extension. See, that's funny because you can see the timestamp here, and it's vitals checking time at the Cobb County Detention Center, but no charge nurse in sight. 2 minutes in, and still no nurse around, just the deputies who took him out as he was begging for fresh air. 10 minutes after vital checking time, the sheriff picks him up and gives him a chair to sit on. 16 minutes after vital checking time, the sheriffs take him in a wheelchair towards the isolation room. So the question here is, why weren't his vitals taken throughout the 15 minutes that he waited outside his cell? Even if the charge nurse was going cell by cell, she should have made her checkup on Wingo a priority, considering how he was painfully screaming throughout the night, something that even she was bothered by. You can see why we're inclined to believe that she should be charged with neglect. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. In February and June of 2020, internal investigations absolved all parties of criminal negligence. The Wingo family submitted complaints to the Georgia Board of Nursing against the nurses, and after 3 years, around July of 2023, the board made their decision to allow Annaleen Visser to continue practicing medicine, even though she admitted to denying a dying man medical care. She gets to go back to work as a charge nurse, charge-free, while the Wingo family continues to hope for justice with their protests. And if you want to support them, there's a change.org petition you can support which compels Cobb County District Attorney Joyette Holmes to bring charges against the nurses that caused his death. Until next time, thanks for watching. Oh, and if you found the case of this evil nurse to be disturbing, well, you need to check out my video on the most irresponsible pilot in the history of Delta Airlines.